little funny story. Last week, Pedro called me and said, hey, can we switch topics? And it's like, sure. We switched presentations here in the last week, but the idea of my presentation is to share some data on different protocols. There's really, if you look back over the last 5 years, there hasn't had a ton of recent development in estrus synchronization protocols, but we will highlight some things that are new, some protocols that were added to the protocol sheets more recently. Okay, so Pedro mentioned I am from. Let me make sure this works. I'm from Virginia, so I'm your neighbor from the north. We're in Blacksburg, Virginia, which is the beginning of the southwest side of the state. I work both for the School of Animal Sciences and also at the vet school. We do mainly beef cattle reproductive research. If you've never been to Virginia, specifically the west side of Virginia, it's a really pretty place. Recommend. We're actually part of the Appalachian Trail, goes through Blacksburg. So this is, it's called McAfee's Knob. It's one of the postal cards of the Appalachian Trail. It's really pretty. You can see, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they really are blue. All right, it's pretty amazing. Once you go up there, it's a really nice place. This is an actual picture of our campus. It's a beautiful place. Really is during fall, and some might say it's almost like heaven. And have you heard that before? Somewhere, right? So do you know this song? You're gonna make me sing. Right? Almost heaven, West Virginia, right? Anybody from West Virginia here? So make sure I can call security just in case. But I'm going to make a case here, okay, that this song is not about West Virginia. It is about the west side of Virginia, okay? So if you really think about this, Blue Ridge Mountains, the Shenandoah River, the Blue Ridge Mountains is right there in the west side of Virginia. And then the Shenandoah River runs right through here, not across the border on the west side, okay? We are the true almost heaven, West Virginia, right? So I recommend stopping by. And West Virginia is pretty too. It's not a bad place to be, right? But anyway, we're going to talk about estrus synchronization, and we've been talking about beef cow-calf production and reproductive efficiency and so on. And, to bring us back, and you think about the real goal of beef cow-calf production, for most people, is to make money, right? And we make money by producing a calf per cow per year, right? You have this idea of producing a calf per cow per year. But I really think that we should and we can take that to a next step, right? Where our goal is to win one heavy, healthy calf that have the greatest genetic potential to perform per cow every year, right? And we can add another level to this, and we want to do all this at the lowest cost possible, right? To ensure and maximize profitability. So with that in mind, reproduction is pretty important. We've been talking about this. This is a repro meeting, and we've heard a lot about this already, but it really is true. And reproductive efficiency, it's key for profitability and productivity of beef cow-calf operations. I challenge you today to think about this. What is reproductive efficiency, and how do you define that? And I like to challenge you to actually write it down, right? What is reproductive efficiency for you in your operation? What does that mean? Because if we don't define, and if we don't write it down, we don't really pursue that. And I think it's important that we pursue reproductive efficiency. So I would define reproductive efficiency as optimizing pregnancy rate early in the breeding season, and you heard a lot about that, right? Not only just maximizing or optimizing pregnancy rate, but when cows become pregnant, it's important, because that will determine when cows will calve and so on, right? And then we want to select and develop replacement heifers that have high fertility, and you want to do all that at the lowest cost possible. You probably want to also select and develop bulls that have high fertility, right? That will breed cows. But again, I would challenge you to define reproductive efficiency on your herd write it down and pursue that so that you can achieve reproductive efficiency, right? It's a good exercise, I believe. Also, as we think about efficiency and reproductive efficiency, there's not the one thing that we can do to really achieve that. It's a combination of things. And I like to think about it like this little equation, right? It's a sum of things that we do every day that will help us achieve reproductive efficiency. So management is really important. Having a sound nutrition and animal health program, extremely important. Have a selection pressure for fertility, right? Selecting animals that become pregnant, selecting females that become pregnant, select bulls that will get cows pregnant. It's important. And then we can take advantage of reproductive technologies. And I think we should do things in that order. I think the order is also pretty important. We have to have a solid management plan in place. We need nutrition and animal health. We need selection pressure for fertility. And then after you've done those things, you can start implementing reproductive technologies. What usually most people do is they'll jump to the reproductive technology right away. I want an AI. I want to do embryo transfer. And those are all good things. But if you don't have good management, if you don't have a solid nutrition plan and animal health program, right? If you don't have selection pressure, those technologies are not miracles, right? And so it's important to think about that. So to maximize the benefits of those technologies, we need to make sure that we have other things in place first so that we can take the most advantage of those technologies and we can make sure that they're working. Okay? So one of the technologies that we're going to talk about it and we're going to focus today is estrus synchronization. And it really is just this pharmacological control of the estrus cycle. So a little bit earlier, you heard about Dr. Lauderdale in the efforts to get developed and produce approved prostaglandin, right? So Lutalize, the first product there. We have several other in the market. They really change how we start controlling the estrus cycle. And we have other products now that we can use, and it can really, actually, over the last 30 years, we've learned to control the estrus cycle. And we do a pretty good job about synchronizing ovulation, okay? There are several benefits. Dr. Fontes, Pedro talked a little bit about that earlier, of using fixed-time AI. And again, that's a technology that's proven. We know it works, and several people are taking advantage of it. And we hope that more and more people can see the value of doing estrus synchronization. So if you are already using estrus synchronization, or if you're thinking about doing fixed-time AI, what are the two main factors that affect pregnancy rate to time AI? And I'll let you think about that in a second here. You can yell it out if you want. Days postpartum is one of them. What's the other one? Body condition score. Exactly. Right? So days postpartum and body condition score are two of the most important factors that affect pregnancy rate to time AI. Is the synchronization protocol important? Yes. Is the technician important? Yes. Is the semen that we use important? Yes. Right? There's all the things that are important, but body condition score and days postpartum really will drive or kill the success of estrus synchronization programs. Okay, and I think it's important that we think about this. I get emails sometimes and I get calls sometimes. Our pregnancy rates were horrible this year. And usually the first question I ask is like, what's the body condition score of the cows? Right? What was the days postpartum of those cows? Because if those two things are in order, then we can really start looking at some other differences. Okay? Really nice study from Dr. Stevenson out of Kansas State where he compiled a lot of data on inseminations. So this is days postpartum and body condition score for multiparous cows and primiparous cows or first calf heifers. Okay? And the highest or best pregnancy rates were found when cows were more than 72 days postpartum and greater than 5 body condition score. Same thing for first calf heifers. And there are a couple things I think are really nice about this. Look at the average for the best scenario. It's 51.7. Right? Do we get better than that? We do. But we hear also very often, it's like, oh, it's only 50%. Or, that's pretty good average. That's pretty good average, right? It's half of your cows pregnant in 1 day, okay? The other thing that I think it's interesting is that you can have good days postpartum, but not good body condition score, and that doesn't fix it. Or you can have good body condition score, but short days postpartum, that doesn't fix it either. They kind of go hand in hand, right? So that's important. And I think we can understand that a cow that have longer days postpartum have more time to recover from parturition, to regain body condition score, right? So they go hand in hand. And we definitely need both, longer days postpartum and then adequate body condition score, okay? So nutrition is important, and a lot of the drive on the effects of body condition score and days postpartum and so on comes through these effects of nutrition on reproductive. And there are several effects of nutrition on reproduction, right? On the production of hormones, on development of follicles, on the ability to show estrus and all those things. So nutrition drives those factors, okay? Some interesting data out of Dr. Lamb's group when he was in Minnesota, looking at the impact of cyclicity at the initiation of the protocol, okay, with things that will impact cyclicity at the beginning of a synchronization protocol. Right, so overall, about 65% of the cows were cycling out of 2,200 cows. So fairly good number of cows are cycling at the beginning of the protocol. Okay. So our first calf heifers, usually they have less of those cows that are cycling at the beginning of the breeding season or beginning of the protocol compared to our multiparous cows. One of the things that was pretty important is for each one increase in unit in body condition score, we increase cyclicity by 11%. Right? As we go from 4 to 5, body condition score, for example, have 11% more of our cows cycling. And the same thing for each 1 unit increase in days postpartum, we increase cyclicity by 5%. Right? So small changes here can really have a big effect on the proportion of cows that are cycling at the beginning of the breeding season. Okay. And if those cows, more of those cows are cycling at the beginning of the breeding season, pregnancy rate is improved to fixed time day I. Right? So nutrition does have an effect, right? And to highlight that even more, I want to share a study that we concluded recently at Virginia Tech, where we're looking at cows that were either fed a maintenance diet or cows that were fed a 70% of maintenance, so cows that were nutritionally restricted. These are mature beef cows that were dry, no calves on them. We expose them to the nutrition treatments, we synchronize them, and then we follow follicle development and also progesterone concentration after ovulation, okay? So our restricted cows did lose weight. Our maintenance treatment, we learned that grad students are terrible about feeding cows. They'll feed their cows too much, right? They don't like to see cows not eating. So our maintenance group actually gained some weight, and our restriction cows lost some weight. But at least we have separation, right? So we had separation in body weight, and we created a state of negative energy balance, okay? So what that do to those cows that were exposed to fixed time day I? Have a numerical, not a statistical difference in estrus expression. We don't have a lot of cows, so for this kind of data, tough to show statistical difference here, but a numerical difference in estrus expression between those cows that are in maintenance versus cows that are restricted. This is follicle diameter in each one of the days of the estrus synchronization protocol. So we did a 7-day co-sync seeder. So on day 0 here, at GNR age, the diameter of the largest follicle in the ovary, okay? Similar at the beginning of the protocol, similar at seeder removal here, prostaglandin injection, and then at the day of AI, the second GNR age injection, cows that were not restricted had a larger follicle compared to cows that were restricted, okay? We also followed CL volume. So following ovulation, we have formation of the corpus luteum in the ovary that's going to produce progesterone. It's an important hormone to maintain pregnancy. This is progesterone CL volume on day 5 and then 7 post-ovulation. there were no statistical difference in volume, but when we look at progesterone concentration and the capacity of those CLs to produce progesterone, by day 6 and day 7 post-ovulation, those values started separating a little bit, where our maintenance cows actually had greater concentration of progesterone compared to those restricted cows. Like, okay, Vitor, what does that matter? Well, there's some data before us. This is work of Dr. Perry. I think it's part of his PhD work, or following his PhD work. But when he was, I think Mike Smith lab in Missouri, showing that the diameter of the follicle they're gonna AI to impacts pregnancy rate. So that's that curve there, the continuous line. So cows that had larger follicle had better pregnancy rate, and also they had less pregnancy loss. Okay, so which is that pregnancy on day 60. So if you compare those, the pregnancy here and here, there's some losses that happen there. So there seems to be like a sweet spot where if we can get follicles to be above that 12.8 or 13 millimeters, we have better pregnancy rate, we have less pregnancy loss. Okay. Also, from the study, you see that those larger follicles had greater, will create CLs, corpus luteums, that will have more progesterone. Okay. And cows that have higher progesterone post-AI, as the progesterone rises quicker in a sharper way rather than not so much, will more likely be pregnant. Okay, so post-ovulation concentration of progesterone is important, right? Not only for cows to become pregnant, but to maintain and stay pregnant. So yeah, body condition score and days per part is really important. A lot of that is driven by the impacts that nutrition will have on reproduction. Okay, just to cite a few things that will impact reproduction. It's like, well, Vitor, I thought this was a talk about estrus synchronization and protocols, right? Well, it is, and you're probably going like, which protocol do I use? That's what I want to know, right? But I think it's important, and a lot of times we get hung up on this idea of which protocol do I use, and we forget about the other things that really drive pregnancy success, okay? So this has been shown a couple times. This is our website. Hopefully you've visited this before. It's not the first time you've seen this, the Beef Reproduction Task Force website. If you click there on the protocols, you're going to find there are 4 sheets of protocols. You've already seen the protocol for natural service and heat detection. We have beef cow protocols for heat detection and timed AI, and then protocols for fixed timed AI. Have the same type of sheets for heifers, right? Dividing between heat detection and timed AI, and then fixed timed AI, okay? So usually when I show these, people are like, okay, there's 4 protocols there for fixed timed AI or for cows. There's 5 protocols for fixed timed AI for heifers. Which protocol do I use? And which one is better? And how do they compare to each other? And the reality is we don't have data comparison between all of those, right? I don't have the 7-day compared to the MGA PG timed AI, for example. Right? Some of those studies don't exist, right? What we have is some studies that will compare some of those protocols. We have studies that were done to develop those protocols. So we know that they work on a variety of different cows. Cows are cycling, cows are not cycling. We know that they work in different geographic locations and so on. So sometimes it's hard for me to sit here and say, this is the best protocol we have, right? Because that's just the reality of it. It's like, well, why don't you guys just do those experiments, right? We would love to do it, but it's hard to do those kinds of things. So I think it's important to understand that within those categories of protocols for both cows and heifers, those protocols that are there have a lot of data behind it, right? Scientific data, a lot of different a lot of inseminations, a lot of geographic locations and so on, so that we know that they work, okay? So within category, there might be some variation, and there might be some studies that show a variation between pregnancy rate between protocols, but for the majority of times, they all work pretty similarly. And then it becomes a matter of, do I want to do a short protocol? Do I want to work cattle 4 times versus 3 times? The 14 days for heifers, for example, I get calls and some of the names, and you would not imagine some of the fights that we have over the naming protocols, right? There's some interesting meetings that go about that. But I get calls like, I want to do the 14-day. It's like, okay, but I want to breed in 2 weeks. It's like, well, it's too late, right? Because it's a little bit misleading. The 14-day protocol is 33 days long. Right? It's a 14-day cedar protocol. So, I mean, it's whether or not, did you really get planning ahead to do some of these protocols, okay? The 7-day co-sync cedar, and this is a little bit, I've had 10-year-old now, but we did a survey out of this meeting, people that attended ARSBC, and we asked, which protocols do you use? And 10 years ago, more than half or slightly half of the beef cows that were synchronized were being done using the 7-day co-sync cedar. Okay, this is a protocol that's been around since 2006, 2007, and it's very popular because it's short and require working cattle 3 times, right? Which is as low as we can get for fixed time AI, right? It's hard to do fixed time AI with just 2 cattle handling events. I don't know if we're going to get there. Right, we're going to need different products and different things. For heifers, it works, and it's somewhat popular because, again, it's a short term, only requires working 3 times. And we don't have data on the adoption of this, but this 14-day cedar protocol, it's very popular. And it's probably one of the most popular protocols for heifers. Okay, it does a great job of inducing cyclicity and synchronizing a second follicular wave, which has better fertility and so on. So it's a good protocol, right? So if you think about how those protocols work and the estrus cycle and our understanding that we have of the estrus cycle, what we are doing with these protocols is we're trying to mimic the estrus cycle. And if you think about the estrus cycle, it's a cycle because you start from ovulation, and then you finish with an ovulation. And then it's a cycle that you go again for another ovulation, and another ovulation, and so on. So as we design some of these protocols, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to mimic the estrus cycle. So for the 7-day, for example, ideally, as in row cows, when we give a gender age injection and we start the cedar, we're going to cause an ovulation, right? And the formation of a corpus luteum, and then an emergence of a new follicular wave. And 7 days later, we're going to have a mature follicle, mature corpus luteum in the ovary, and then we give prostaglandin injection. We're going to cause the lyse of that CL. The CL goes down. Progesterone concentration starts to reduce, right? We have estrus behavior because we have increased estradiol coming from that dominant follicle that we have now in the ovary. Reduce progesterone concentration because of our prostaglandin injection here, lies in the CL. Have a dominant follicle that's going to hopefully ovulate at the time of AI, right? So that's what we're doing. Now, some of the things that can happen is, as you start this protocol, you don't have an ovulation, right? You don't have a follicle there in the ovary that will respond to that injection of gender age, and then that will change the subsequent follicular wave, those change synchronization rates, and they will change fertility of those protocols as well, okay? So response to that first gender age is pretty important, and it can help drive success or improve success in synchronization of using that the 7-day co-sync cedar. So how can we improve the response to that first gender age? Well, there's some pre-synchronization protocols that people have been working on, and perhaps now one of the most common and the most famous one is the 7-7 sync work that's being done in cows by Dr. Jordan Thomas in Missouri, right? And the idea of this protocol is exactly this. How can we pre-synchronize cows to increase response to that first gender age, right? So again, if you start that synchronization on a cow, we give her prostaglandin. If she does have a CL on the ovary, we're going to lyse a CL, get a new follicular wave going. We increase response to the first gender age because we carry over those follicles that are there under higher concentration of progesterone so they can develop. We induce ovulation with the first generate injection, generation of another CL, a new follicular wave, just like the 7-day at this point, right? We lyse the CL with prostaglandin, we increase the growth of the dominant follicle, have estrus behavior, reduce progesterone concentration, increase estradiol, and then we can have a second ovulation with GenRH at the time of AI. So it's a protocol that does a pretty good job of doing this, of pre-synchronizing and increasing response to that first GenRH. Like, all right, so is that better than the 7-day? There's some data out there. The initial data out of Dr. Thomas' lab got everybody very excited. So definitely an increasing estrus response following prostaglandin and CDER removal for those cows who are exposed to 7 and 7, right? So 82% of cows in estrus versus 64%. And we know that when cows show estrus pre-AI, we have an improvement in pregnancy rates. So this was very nice to see. And on one of the initial studies, a difference in pregnancy rate, right? 72% for 7 and 7 versus 61% on the 7-day. A couple of things to look at here. Look how good those pregnancy rates are, right? Our control doing 61%. It's very good. It's very good. And then 72%, again, that's, got a lot of people excited. Since then, we've done some work, and others have done some work. This is data out of Virginia. We work with the prison system there. It's a group of about 2,500 cows. So we enrolled them on a 7 and 7 versus 7-day. Very similar results on estrus expression. So an increase in estrus expression when comparing the 7 and 7 with the 7-day. But for us, we didn't see an increase in pregnancy rate. But again, overall, look how good those pregnancy rates were. Right? This is an average of 2,500 cows. Right? So 63% and 61%. But we didn't see that improvement in pregnancy rates. Now, I know of others that have done protocols, the 7 and 7 versus 7-day, and have seen improvement. I tell you that our manager, our beef cattle manager at Virginia Tech, does the 7 and 7, really likes it. It does very successful with embryo transfer recipients, right? Because you get a lot of estrus, so you have a lot of response, a lot of cows with CL, so an increase embryo transfer and recipient utilization. But for us, for some reason, we didn't quite see a difference in pregnancy rate. I think it's not there because I was afraid I was going to over time. But even if you separate the pregnancy rate between cows that show estrus versus no estrus, we didn't see an improvement, unfortunately. Okay, but others have seen it. One of the criticisms that we have received in the past is that it's hard to compare. Again, thinking about comparing those protocols, it's not so fair to compare a protocol that's without pre-synchronization with a protocol that does have pre-synchronization. So Dr. George Perry, who is a former member of the task force, have done some of this work. So with comparing the 7 and 7, the pre-synchronization protocol, versus the PG 6-day, which is another pre-synchronization protocol, he did see an increase in estrus expression as well, which has been very consistent within the projects that we see when using the 7 and 7. So more cows in estrus before AI. He did have both conventional and sex-sorted semen. Okay, so if you look at overall, there was no difference in pregnancy rate. And if you compare to even like the sex and the conventional semen, he didn't see an improvement there. Okay, but again, both protocols work pretty well, right? Both protocols work really well. And if you look at their conventional semen, over 50%, and even our sex-sorted semen around there, close to 35-40% pregnancy rate, which is what we see usually with sex semen. Okay. So what about heifers? One of the things that the 7 and 7, when it first started showing up and people started using it, can we do that in heifers? There've been previous work out of Dr. Lamb with Nikki that's here today, comparing the 7 and 7 or looking at pre-synchronization in heifers. So we also have done that work. We partnered with some others, and we compared the 7 and 7 versus 7 day for beef heifers. We enrolled a lot of heifers on this. And again, just a regular 7 day as our control versus a 7 and 7 sync as our treatment there. Okay, cattle in Virginia, Georgia, South Dakota, kind of across the country there. I don't know what that's there. So we looked at a couple different things in this experiment as well. We're able to look at size of follicle. So this is diameter of the dominant follicle at the time of the first gender age, okay, and at the time of cedar removal. So our cows that were in the 7 and 7 sync had greater follicle diameter, both at the beginning here of the 7 day or the first gender age, and at the time of cedar removal. We had increased the proportion of heifers that have a CL at the time of cedar removal and prostaglandin, which means that we had an increasing response to that first gender age, which is desirable, right? In our 7 and 7 sync, we actually had 100% of our heifers respond to that first gender age and have a CL at the time of cedar removal. And we looked at, I don't know what's going on there, sorry. When we looked at estrus expression, 28% increasing estrus expression, again, very consistent with the 7 and 7, having more cows show estrus before AI. And we looked at pregnancy rate. We did see an improvement in pregnancy rate as well for our heifers. So, we're excited about this, and I think it's another option for a protocol for people to use in beef heifers, okay? So, we're doing time, Pedro. I'm lost here. One of the other things that we have, all right, well, we're gonna go short. One of the other things that we have, and I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about this, is our sex semen protocol. This is something that we, I think, included in the list about 3 years ago, and we are happy to see more and more people using sex semen in beef cow-calf operations, okay? So again, there's some protocols for fixed time AI and some protocols for split time AI. So I wanna call attention to some, so if you look at the other protocols, we don't have all this disclaimer on the top, right? But I think it's an important, and as we look to approve some of these protocols and develop these sheets, I think it was important for people to understand some of the differences and expectations when using sex semen in fixed time AI, right? That you are more likely going to be seeing a reduction in pregnancy rate when you compare it to conventional semen. That if you're doing heat detection, that you should delay insemination between 16 to 22 hours. I think that's important. And when doing fixed time AI, that you can use sex semen in a more strategically way, where you can use sex semen, for example, on your females that show estrus, and conventional semen on the females that didn't show estrus, for example, right? Because we know that those females that showed estrus will have a higher chance to become pregnant and so on. To highlight that, or to show some of this is work Dr. Nikki, again, works for ABS. She was working with Dr. Cliff Lamb at Texas A&M, right? So a couple different protocols for pre-synchronization versus just not synchronization with both conventional semen or sex semen. So if you look over both our conventional semen, around 50%, and you look at the sex semen, independent of treatment here, there is about a 8 to 10% reduction, or even 15% reduction in pregnancy rate, which is what we see. And I think it's important for people to understand that when using sex semen, you should expect some of those differences, okay? And keep that in mind. So, to wrap us up, I think it's important that we understand some of those fixed time AI protocols, how they work, as well as some of the benefits and some of the limitations that they have. Again, they're not a magical, right, one that's going to fix everything. Understanding what drives success, I think it's extremely important, and probably more important sometimes than what protocol do you use, right? But if you're choosing a protocol, trust the task force, right? This is something that's been going on for about 20 years now, 24 years now, where a lot of what we do is to look at the science behind those protocols so that we can recommend them with a lot of trust. Okay. The other thing that I'll tell you is document your results, because we get calls be like, this year was really bad. It's like, okay, what was it? Oh, it was 53%. I was like, what was it last year? Oh, it was more than that. But do you remember exactly, right? And I think that's important, right? So document your results and look at your 5-year average. And if you're really deviating 5, 6, 10% over your 5-year average, then we should look at some what's going on. But if you're within that 5% change, that's a normal change within a year, right? And maybe you don't need to make some drastic changes. Maybe you don't need to, completely change your protocol or change the products that you use and so on, right? But if you don't document results, it's hard for us to make those decisions, okay? And then if you're thinking about using sex semen, which I think is a great tool that we have, I think you can do that very strategically. Using some of your cows are looking better condition, and definitely your cows are showing estrus. We get to stand here and show a lot of this data and look important, but it's a collaboration with a lot of people. We appreciate the work that the students do to generate a lot of data. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Vitor. I'd like to open up for a few questions. I think we have time for a few questions for Vitor. Do we have a... Yes, go ahead.
I've got a theoretical question because I'm always intense trying to manage reproduction and get maximum number of calves from my customers that are AI. Has anybody contemplated or looked? I know there's one out there where because I do some ultrasound work where you can breed something, come back and preg check, and then give a lutealized shot to get a second chance. What most people do that I work with, they synchronize doing AI and turn the bulls out, or they may heat check and on a daily basis to catch the ones that didn't conceive. Mm-hmm. I've had a theory about doing it, and we almost did it, and we backed out of trying to come up with a cedar on day 16. Maybe not put a GnRH shot, leave it for 7 days and pull it, and maybe save some efficiency there. I know it's outside the box, some people are thinking, but I got to go this way because with ET, we quite often we resync recips to be efficient, to give each recip at least 2 chances quick. Has anybody thought about or got input on a possibility?
Yeah, the question in essence is about resynchronization, right? And I'll tell you that if you go to Brazil, that's what everybody's doing, right? A little bit different situation there where the AI calf has a lot of value, and sometimes, especially on some larger operations, have longer breeding seasons, and geographically that doesn't matter sometimes weather-wise, right? But very common, right? And there's a couple of strategies that people can do. You can do a synchronization, come back, preg check at day 30 or day 28. In the open cows, you just start another protocol, right? A 7-day, for example. So we'll be doing 2 inseminations at that point by day 40, roughly, right, of the breeding season, have done 2 inseminations, okay? Now, one strategy is to do an early resynchronization where you start the protocol on cows that you don't know if they're pregnant or not, right? And then you time the prostaglandin injection with the pregnancy diagnosis. So you preg check cows. For example, you put a seed there on day 14, and then on day 21, for example, on day 28, you can preg check. Cows are open. You give a prostaglandin, re-enroll them right away, right? So AI them 2, 3 days later. Cows are pregnant. You just separate them, right? So you gain about 20 days by doing something like this, 15 days or so into the breeding season. Very common to do that. Pedro has done a lot of work with early pregnancy diagnosis using Doppler ultrasound, seeing if you can actually do some pregnancy diagnosis around day 22, day 20. We collaborate with Pedro with this. And you can, and there's a lot of results from like Brazil and South America. We've been struggling to replicate some of those results here, I would say, right? There's some pregnancy losses that we think we might be generating. I thought about showing some of this, but I know there's more to look into this. I don't know if we're quite ready to close the story and show to producers right away. But for sure, if you have an opportunity, if you can do your own AI, for example, if you don't rely on hiring AI technicians that can need to come and so on, which will increase some of the prices, if you can catch the return to estrus, it's a great option, right? With or without synchronization, like putting a seeder back, for example. That's something that we do at Virginia Tech with our pure bed herds. We do AI. Or on day 14 post-AI, we put a seeder, then we pull the seeder and we'll heat check, right? And then AI on that second return. And that helps tight that return to estrus a little bit more, right? In essence, if you don't do that, you're probably going to have cows coming to estrus within 5 days. If you put a seeder, you can tie that up for maybe 2-3 days, catch a lot of those cows in estrus, and AI them again. You can do that with bulls as well, right? Some people do that with bulls. You put a seeder on, try to even tighten that up a little bit, and it can be done. Look at bull power, BSC, and all those things. So those strategies exist, and I think they can be used. It's a rather really, do you have the facilities to sort cattle? Do you have the ability to AI yourself so you can do heat check and AI your cows and not add so much to the cost of those pregnancies? But those strategies, I think, are important, and they do exist.
Got time for one more question.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to make a couple statements. When you get into the discussion about sex semen usage, it can be pretty nuanced, and I was just going to make a couple of comments here representing ST Genetics. Some of that data, like from 2012, we've had 3 iterations of new technology to that sex semen since then, so understand presenting the data for sure, but one of the encouraging things about this technology is just like a lot of technologies, it moves pretty rapidly, right? And so some of the things we're seeing, we do a lot of research constantly with different universities and third parties comparing sex semen to conventional. Some of the latest stuff we've done with Dr. Looney, who's here, is very, very encouraging. In the early days of that technology, it was very crude, and it didn't matter which bull you used, sex semen, it was going to be significantly lower pregnancy rates. And one of the really encouraging things with these later iterations of the technology is we're seeing a lot more of those bulls that you can plug into a fixed-time AI protocol, and you see no statistical difference. There are still bulls. There's lots of variation, is what I'm trying to say. Similar to conventional semen, some bulls are just going to inherently be more fertile than others. Some bulls sort better than others. But to me, one of the really encouraging things is we're seeing a lot more bulls that you do not see a statistical difference in a single fixed-time AI protocol than in the early days of the technology. And also some of the later data is also showing us that it's not as sensitive to time of insemination. So again, a lot of the early sex semen product, it was very sensitive to timing of insemination. Breeding later yielded significantly higher results. And a lot of the new data we're getting with the new iterations, the new technology, is you can go in there and AI at the same time you would with conventional semen and see no difference. So it's a more nuanced conversation. I understand you're still going to have some of those bulls that do perform lower. But like I said, the encouraging thing is as this technology gets better, a lot more of those bulls that you can plug in, and you don't see that difference in fertility in those. And especially in the context of commercial cow-calf operations, that's really encouraging because that's going to be nothing but fixed-time AI pretty much compared to your seed stock operators that have historically used the technology that can a lot of times breed off of heats and be more precise. So just a couple comments on that.
I appreciate that, Luke. Yeah, for sure. Things change rapidly. And I definitely agree with the statement about the bulls, right? We're learning more and more about that. Even differences in fixed-time AI when using bulls, which is conventional semen, right? There's some bulls that do better than others, and I think your guys' job, some of the semen companies, is to identify those bulls and sell those, and you guys do that. So appreciate the comments.
All right, let's thank Dr. Mercadante one more time. Thanks, Victor.